Kinsey,
Here.
Mossberg,
Here.
Klein,
Here.
Parker.
Here.
We'll move on to number 3, approval of minutes of the regular meeting held March 14th, 2022.
Move to approve the minutes. Second.
Stop. Need some amendments.
Oh, I did.
Yep. Dale was the one that, commission member, number 10 is commission member lost, assured Mr. Turner. Not me.
Well, that's right, because he came in late.
Yeah, and then we had discussion about the electrical part for the hangers, and it's not anywhere. I wasn't quite sure what our consensus was at the end of the meeting, because after every meeting I get hit up about this. I was waiting for the minutes to come out so I could refresh my memory. It's not in here.
The electrical in the hangar.
For the hangers, yeah.
Heather, can you go back and pull the meeting back up and maybe amend the minutes, and we can table them until next time to include that.
Did we come to any consensus?
Well, I couldn't remember. We had a discussion, but I can't remember what our final consensus was, and I was waiting for the minutes to refresh my memory. Do you remember, Derek?
I think we wanted to make sure they were all the same, no matter what we did. It was, I don't know exactly if we came to that conclusion to actually get it done, or we were just talking about making sure that they're all the same all across the board.
But I thought the board had come, well, it was not an item on the agenda.
Right.
So I thought the general consensus was, right, it needed to be the same, but we needed to fix it. But I couldn't remember if,
Was that putting meters in every hangar? Or
yes.
Okay.
And then, I thought that's what I thought that was the consensus, and then I thought the addition to that is that every hangar needed to be taken that way, and then if somebody had more than one hangar or wanted to co-op with somebody else, they changed it at their expense, but they had to change it back when they left it. And somehow that needed to be worked out.
Yeah, we might have to go back and watch the meeting.
Right.
So that's, yeah.
So, but I wasn't clear on that, and I was waiting for the minutes to come to refresh my memory. It wasn't in the minutes.
Do we need to have that as an agenda item on the next agenda?
Probably, because every time I leave this meeting, I get a phone call.
Okay.
Want to know when it's going to happen.
So I think we need to vote no on the motion. There's a motion and a second, and then we can have another motion to take.
Okay.
Well,
Any further
just-
dis-
No, you're right. Sorry.
Any further discussion on the motion? Would you take? We vote on that.
We'll vote on that, and then
You
we'll.
want to take vote on the motion?
I'm sorry, but it's hard to hear with all this
I'm sorry. We'll
noise
take-
back here. You guys don't talk very loud.
You move up here with that.
Go ahead. You want me to call roll?
Call
Yes.
roll.
Call roll.
Kinsey,
No.
Mossberg, Klein,
No.
Parker.
No. I move we table approval of the minutes. Second.
Would you call roll, please?
Parker,
Yes.
Klein,
Yes.
Kinsey,
Yes.
Mossberg.
Yes.
Okay. We'll move to item number 4, reports from staff, city council report.
I've been out of pocket quite a bit. We did have the deadline for applicants for the business manager closed on Friday. There were 4 that submitted applications, and so we'll be, at this time, OML is going through their backgrounds and everything, making sure their qualifications match what we're looking for. And then we'll be pretty quickly looking at them and scheduling interviews, hopefully.
I do believe there was a couple of additional applications on Friday.
There were on Friday.
I believe so, yes.
So that'd make it 6. Not as many applications as I would have liked, but there are 4 other cities looking for business managers in Oklahoma right now. So I think we probably are experiencing some of that as an impact. Other than that, we're working on, we did have our budget retreat since we met last. I felt like the retreat went well. The only thing, poor about the budget retreat was the projection of flat revenue. And so we're there'll still be some tough decisions to make how we, what projects we prioritize and that sort of thing as we move forward, and how many projects we can do with a flat budget. So. Angelica, is there anything else city council wise?
Not necessarily city council wise, but I have just a couple of updates from me. Financial statements, I should have them out tomorrow or Wednesday. Didn't quite get everything wrapped up that I needed to. We're working to transition that to our accounting associates so that upon my departure, whoever can walk into the city manager role and not have to worry about having to prepare financial statements, at least until Kelly knows what's going to go on further from that. That's the plan. So we're right now it's just me doing a little bit of everything, and so it takes a little bit longer to get things accomplished. One thing that I realized that I have on my agenda for city council that I neglected to put on this agenda is we have a fuel invoice that was over $25,000, and so we'll go ahead and get that on the city council agenda and bring it back here for acknowledgement. I think we've had to do it in that order in the past. I would wait, but I know Derek has some concerns that if we don't move forward in that direction, he's working his way, he'll report here in a little bit, he's working his way pretty quickly through the fuel, and we don't want to have 2 outstanding invoices to ASAP. And then I did receive on Friday afternoon an email from a representative from ODOT, so they're working to get everything squared away to start the construction on this road out here. They're going to repave from Oklahoma Boulevard to just about the entry of the airport here. And so we've got an easement and right-of-way negotiation offer, so I've sent that over to Rick to have him take a look at it, and then it'll be on the May agenda as well for you guys to discuss. So I think they're looking at starting that project in the next 12 months or so. That's all I have.
Anybody have any questions on the city council report? All right, then we'll move to the manager's report. Mr. Corson, the table is yours.
Okay. Try to write this down before I forget. Okay. March, I know the fuel prices went up, but I don't think they went up enough to where it slowed anything down. We had a total of $38,073.43 on fuel sales. With jet fuel, $27,618.55, and even the low lead was $10,112.93, which I thought would kind of dip down with the fuel price, but did not. So they did sell a little bit of oil to the local guys. So I think the most issues we've had with it is the wind. That's really what's been slowing down most everybody from flying the smaller aircraft.
Eric, I'm wondering on the Jet A gallons for February. Well, I don't know, that's probably right. The Jet A is significantly less in February than any other month. Is that accurate? And if so, do you know what happened?
Just a regular Jet A?
Yeah.
Well, that's just the regular, that just goes, most of our traffic was,
The CAA.
CAA. So,
We're tracking how we benefit from being associated with the CAA.
Well, I know, but the CAA, you know, still,
yeah, I will say that,
because we started tracking that in September with CAA,
yeah, it
and
is.
we were still having 14,000, 5,000, 4,000, 4,000, 8,000, 700, and then 9,000.
I think, I have the February fuel report sitting in front of me, and
What was weather affecting some of that?
Well, that's what I'm wondering.
We had a snow.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't,
Short line.
yeah,
there was some snow and there was some windy days. I was actually surprised we got up that high on fuel cells, but it really was technically pretty much just all CAA.
Okay.
It did not stop them from flying.
it matches the report from February as far, so I don't think it's a typo unless there's something.
Kardashians had money to burn.
Yeah.
Okay,
So, yeah, that is, I didn't even really think about that.
I didn't notice it last month, but
Yeah. Yeah, I've never
it kind of
seen
sticks
that.
out like a sore thumb.
It is, yeah. Well, this month already, that first weekend, within the first 5 days, we were over $10,000, almost $11,000 just in Jet A sales alone. And that was included with just regulars, not just CAA, but now we're well over 20,000 already because we've had, that's really good traffic going on. The wind being 20 to 30 mile an hour, we just haven't had any low lead sales besides just local guys. We did get one from Georgia that stopped in a Cirrus SR22, but that was just one. So I imagine this month should be pretty good as well. For the maintenance wise, I purchased 2 new rear tires for the zero turn and blades for the zero turn. I put the tires on myself just to kind of save some money from just that extra labor charge. So I feel comfortable doing it on those tires, but maybe not so much on the tractor tires and vehicle tires. So everything else is pretty much ready to go once I get the equipment back up at the back wing and 3-point. I just haven't got to that point because I've got other stuff attached to it already. Williams Electric came, fixed the runway lines. They found that it was within that 100 feet from the Bravo 3 to the Papias. Plus there was some issues on the lights on 1/8 in there, gopher wise. So they fixed that. That alone was $16,200. That's not fixing the taxi lights, which is another issue that they'll have to search to find out what that is. And then the Pappy regulator, they were going to switch that over. They were going to use the the old regulator, but the wiring is different. One was 30 amp and the other was like 100 something. So they couldn't switch that without having to come back, which would cost more. So I thought that might just be kind of saved for later time, as this was pretty expensive.
So that, was that for the taxiway lights or the traffic light? The one they didn't fix. What you was just talking about?
That was the pappy.
Okay.
So they think the pappies is just a matter of switching that to the other regulator. So,
So we still have some taxiway lights out,
yes, most of them.
but we're scheduled to have all those replaced here soon.
It's in our 5-year plan. Let me see if I have that with
I
me.
mean, that's what the OAC is paying for the next year or so.
Yeah, it's on that next,
It is the next,
it's within that next taxi project,
How many feet of taxiway lights are out?
all of them.
All the taxi.
yeah, that's,
All these down there, I think the only ones working are on the 3/6 end that come down to where the concrete meets the asphalt and then it stops. And then we got taxi lights on the Bravo 2 and 3.
so we, for FY '23, we are planning to bank our funds for that. And then 2024 is when we are slated to do that, the taxiway.
So that's 3 years ago.
Yeah, so we're a little ways away on that. And then Derek, correct me if I'm wrong, it sounds like our biggest issue is gophers for the wiring. We've gotten in contact with NRCS about about renting the equipment. Is that,
Yeah.
I don't know if you were planning to talk about that or not, but renting some equipment so that we can put poison down more effectively than the manual pellet gun that we're currently using. So I think that's probably something that we really need to look at. I can't remember what did they say? It was going to be $30?
$30 to rent it and then $4.50 per pound. And the machine is set up for 2 pounds per acre.
Was it a spreader or is it?
It's you hook it onto the back of the tractor, it's a 3-point hookup, and it has the little deal that goes into the ground, and you drag it in there, and as you go, it spreads the pellets. And what you try to do is intercept one of their tunnels, and then they'll go, when they go through, they eat that, which would work really well on, the turf runway, kind of out there. I just don't know how deep it goes, which would probably maybe be an issue. I don't know how deep how deep the point goes. So that's something I'd have to find out.
You do that with a little tractor? You do that on a little tractor?
Little tractor, yeah. Which, that's what the farmers use, and, I mean, they've got, good success with that, in their field and everything.
So it's a device that goes into the ground and you drag it through the
Yeah.
ground?
Yeah, which,
How do you keep it hidden wires?
that's why I'm wondering how deep it goes, because I don't know how deep it goes. Normally the farmers use it in their field, you can see it, like, last year they had it in this field, and I was wondering what those lines were, and I realized that's what it was.
So you're saying that we spent all this money to fix this, but gophers can cause us to have this
That,
problem?
exactly, and that's what Williams Electric said. He said, we fixed it, but I can't guarantee it's not gonna happen again somewhere, because the lines are buried, and there's gophers, you know. It doesn't even have to be gophers, I mean, it could be other stuff too, so he said, if we ever got another power surge or lightning strike or something, it's just, he said we won't have, if it was in conduit, we wouldn't be having that issue. So,
Does it seem like maybe we should have a discussion on putting that in conduit as opposed, I mean, obviously we can't have the gophers, but that may be the better, so,
That's 2 miles of conduit.
yeah. So maybe when we're talking about the taxiway lights, we make sure that that's part of our,
That's spec.
part of the spec
yeah.
on there, that we do it
Which,
that way.
I wouldn't see engineers now, I wouldn't see Toby engineering anything out to be direct buried, I think. From where just had to replace, you had to, fabricate one because they don't make those across, so I just made that. Flex hoses and clamps, fixed some vacuum leaks, and he said there was a lot of them. Which if you ever looked under the hood, there's just vacuum lines everywhere, so it's ridiculous. Installed a used carburetor, because they don't make the two-barrel carburetors anymore. So, his idea was to get one. They put a manual choke kit on it. I haven't, since getting it back, I haven't even had to choke it, even in the cooler mornings. And the idle kicker solenoid to kick up the RPM when you engage the PTO to pump. So all costing $420. So that was rather inexpensive, and it runs like it's new. I mean, it's so quiet and so smooth. Should have done that a long time ago, I guess. But other than that, he said that should last. He doesn't feel like it's just gonna work for a little bit and then become a problem again. I rolled the turf runway. I got the roller out there by the turf runway, out of the way, of course, but I rolled it 3 times. I don't know if it's made a difference. I don't know if anybody's used it. I know Todd landed on it the other day, but I didn't ask him if it was smooth or not. I'll probably roll it maybe a couple more times before I have to put that 3-point on there and then that mower attachment. I don't know if I'll be able to roll it anymore this year or season. The engineers Park Hill, they sent the airport inspector that was here for the Odals, sent him to take pictures of our AWAS, our taxi, and our ramp for future projects, and mainly the AWAS replacement, which is slated for this year, maybe towards the end of September. I asked him if it was a sure thing to get that AWAS replacement, and he said it wasn't a sure thing until the grant was in hand, but it was added to the OAC's airport construction program, and they gave them Park Hill a contract to design it. So it would take something extraordinary to derail it at this point, i.e. major state budget shortfall or something. So sounds like it is going to happen. It's just, I thought it was fully funded from what he said, but it's, we have to pay 5% of it. So if we budget in $10,000 to $12,000, we should be fine. But it'll take our analog AWAS out and make it up to date and up to par with what we're supposed to be having. Which also will take care of some of the possible issues that we would have with our AWAS now. That according to LMP, there was a connection from the dryer motor assembly that could be faulty. So if that, I don't really worry about that. I don't know if he was just trying to sell us another part or what, but if they take care of that, then we don't have to worry about that anymore. They also sent me, Craig Boyer with Park Hill sent me an email. They're working on a preliminary engineering report. As part of that, they come up with pavement section options for them to review. They have to come up with a fleet mix, which is what our typical aircraft traffic over the course of the year is made up of. The FAA records show we get about 6,250 operations a year, average of 18 flights in or out per day. They asked if I'd come up with the aircraft to use for these operations. They didn't really want the smaller aircraft like the 182s. They want the heavier aircraft. So I went back through the year on our fuel reports to see what jet traffic we had, and so I made up a spreadsheet and sent it to them. So hopefully, of course, the more bigger jet traffic we get, the better option of pavement that we be able to get funded for. So, I don't know. I mean, I know the small aircraft that counts too, but like I said, they want to know, like, especially if we have asphalt taxiway, if we get bigger jets on there, if that would be able to handle, if the asphalt would be able to handle the bigger jets. So that's why they wanted that list. And the hangar issues have been brought up again. Just not having any open hangars. Which was brought. They asked if we had any open hangars. I said no, we're all full. We've got a list, a waiting list. So they were talking about some guy maybe building one to house a Piper 30, or Piper Mirage. So
How deep's the waiting list?
that's one thing. There's at least 6. But some of those guys, like Brandon Farney, he's got at least 3 that he could probably move over here. Jeff Meyer, he's got his 172, and he was wanting to get a Mooney. So
There's 6 individuals, but some of them have multiple aircraft in there.
So, maybe 10 aircraft.
at least 8. I imagine. Plus the guys who have passed their pilot training, got some check ride, and they're looking to buy planes to hangar here as well. We've had some planes been purchased, so the round top possibly could be empty. The 172 that was in there been sold, so it'll probably move out eventually here within the next couple months probably. And then that 310s that's been in there forever. The airport manager from Kingman is one who bought it. He came down last weekend, I think it was Saturday. Said he found some parts, so he'll be coming down once he gets the rest of the parts to put it together and fly out of here. So both of those will be out. The only one that we'd have left is Mike Mackey's 182. So I mean, that would be another option if somebody wants to put them in there. The only bad thing is most everybody wants to use the west side. The east side's on a deep line, so when you go to push it in or pull it in, you're at an incline, trying to pull it up and push it in.
Anything else?
That's it.
Anybody have questions? Where are we at with the Air Force?
The past 2 times I remember to check on that, when I go to the website, it says I don't have a secure. So,
connection.
Yeah, secure connection, so it never lets me into what I want, or what I need to get to print off the form to fill it out again.
Well, we'll put that on our priority list for this month. Try to get that bought back, because we need to get that process started again.
I don't know why all of a sudden it says it's not a secure connection.
We can work with SPI and see.
Russia.
What'd you say, Russia?
I said Russia.
Were they actually land, I mean, see the T6 is fine, do they actually land there? But they're just doing like no approaches.
No, they just do their maneuvers and they're practicing, but that doesn't, what we're trying to
They
do
do
is.
touch and goes.
Yeah, they do touch and goes and they do their flight simulations, engine out and stuff. But what we're trying to get is to where if they needed to, they could stop, fuel up, do their, whatever they do in the break rooms. And then, but that also would, I probably had 3 or 4 people call asking if we take the government airport, which we don't, so they can't. The Arizona Guard called this morning, couldn't take the picture of the card, so I don't know if they've been flying in, imagine helicopters. It'd be definitely be a good thing to do.
Okay. Move on to item number 5, discussion and action on fiscal year 2022 and 2023 airport fund budget.
So Derek and Terry and I met, and I don't know that we'll be ready to approve anything specifically tonight, but we wanted to bring it before you guys, and at least, you know, a lot of times we're having this conversation in May, so this gives us some more flexibility. We didn't have the information from Park Hill yet on the AWAS, so we know we need to add in, it'll be more than just the $12,000 match, because for the OAC grants, we have to pay those and then we get reimbursed. So we'll need to put the total expense of, sounds like about $240,000 in, and then the grants received back out as well. So we'll need to add that in there. But what we assumed, how about I say that way, we made some assumptions, and you guys, if I say something that's incorrect, make sure you hop in and correct me. We tried to keep our hangar ground leases flat those should be consistent with what we're billing out. We did increase our fuel based on the average projections that we've been having for this month, this year. So we've been looking about $15,000 of fuel sales on. I did not say that right, but that is what we assumed, wasn't it?
No, that's 16.
It was $20,000 a month in fuel sales, is what we were assuming, and we took it down from what we really have been averaging out. If you average that out for the course of this year, it's a little bit higher than that, but wanted to kind of give us the ability to have be a little conservative there. And then interest income is about $7,500, which is where we're tracking at this year. It may be a little bit. That number can change a little bit. We're just under that for this year. And then in our other revenue, our farm revenue, that lease is up this year, so we'll be rebidding that out. And so I just used what our current annual lease amount is. And then we were looking at $150,000 in oil revenue. Which that's also an average of what we've received in this year, and then kind of taking it down just a little bit. So trying to be somewhat conservative in those numbers, but that gives us a total of about $492,500 in revenue expected for next year. Now, obviously, that does not include our grant revenue that we've just talked about. We'll need to adjust that. Go ahead.
So do you think the fuel revenue is, I heard you're trying to be conservative, but, and I get that. Since CAA, 22,000 is the lowest month, and most months are considerably more than that. Is there anything wrong with maybe taking our 6-month average and using that as the basis for our fuel?
No, I mean, the other side
Because
of
that's going to be offset by the same, it'll have a revenue,
right.
or an expense number that offsets that revenue
Right.
number both ways, so.
The biggest piece that we were a little bit unsure of was for us, or for me anyway, the increase in fuel prices, what that would do to traffic, if that would decrease it. Paul and Terry, I mean, I'm gonna have to defer to you guys on that because I don't really know what impact that is or isn't going to have. But I'm not opposed to any changes. We were trying to be conservative, because you can always go back and add more money in and make an adjustment to increase things when you've had more revenue. Then taking it away is a little bit more difficult, so I don't care one
That's
way or
true.
the other.
I mean, it's still about a 40,
Oh, no,
40% increase.
It's
I
a
mean,
huge
that's
increase, yeah.
45 and somewhere there, so
Yeah.
it's good.
I guess it's not as concerning being that line item because it is what it is. It's not, we don't count on that revenue really other than to cover our fuel costs plus a little bit, more.
Exactly. We're still projecting that we'll only make about 32,000 net on fuel. So.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments on the revenue?
What's re-estimated actual, that's what you expect to end the year with?
On the worksheet, the numbers there, so that column it takes into account historical averages and projects it forward based on historical and current year averages. That's computer generated, and I will tell you, I don't always know where that number comes from. I know that it's computer generated and it is historical. Historical values are built into there. Sometimes though, I don't know I don't understand where that number comes from, so I don't take a lot of stock in that.
But as far as like hangar and ground leases, did we collect 48,000?
No, if you look down here, we've got some ground leases down below, Paul. And so if you take the 42,000 and the 47,000 and add, or excuse me, the 4,700 and add those together, that's that current budget. Do you see what I'm saying? So you have to add those two lines together.
Okay, I see.
And I think the intent was to make sure those were all in the same category this year, and we just didn't get that completely done. So we can break it back out between the two, just for me, ease of looking at it. I think there's how it's set up in our accounting system is some of the accounts that have been on for a long time, they default to this number here, the bottom number, and some default to the top number. So. If there's not any other questions on revenue, we can move forward to expenses. So one of the big assumptions that we put in here, which is a change from previous years, is looking at having 2 full-time staff members, Derek and another staff member. Once again, that's at y'all's discretion. I just know that's what Derek, I feel like, from my perspective and his perspective, we've had a hard time keeping anybody long-term in the part-time role, and it may or may not make a difference. But I think that was our thought process, or was my thought process when we were putting this together, is that if we could put another full-time position in there, we may have some better luck at hiring someone in. I know Derek's had some interest in a full-time position with some people that had aviation experience, and so there's nothing to say that we can't. There's still, I think, a little bit of room in there for part-time as well. We can play with that however y'all want to do it. It's just something to think about. I know we've got, our one part-time guy that we have right now, he's working less and less hours for us because his full-time job is requiring more and more of his time. I know we've got a couple of potential summer help lined up, but I don't think they're going to be, working 40 and 60 hours a pay period either. So, guess not 60, but, working their full 40 hours in a pay period, which would be 2 weeks. So there's some flexibility there. You guys tell us what you want to see. I'm not opposed to any of it, that's just,
Can you keep somebody busy full-time here? Or are they gonna be sitting in the butt in here during December, January, February?
Well, between the two of us, I mean, we can extend hours. And
Well, and I think if you have somebody here full-time, particularly in the winter, that would, did you use any of your PTO? I mean, he's getting to the point where he's gonna start losing it if he hasn't already, and I feel like if we had the staff here, he could take his time off and get the benefit that we're trying to give him.
and I will say, we also have comp time, and Derek, he has more comp time accrued than I like to have employees have. And so now he's not even accruing comp time. He's just, what he's got has been sitting there because he hasn't been able to take it, so he's working overtime, which for me, I would like to see him have some time to take off. And we had that conversation kind of in that meeting as well. It's not that I think that he's not doing a good job or that he can't handle things, because he most definitely can, but to keep, I feel like we've got a good employee fit that we haven't had in a really long time, and I don't want to burn him out. I want him to be able to enjoy his family life as well as enjoy working here. So that's kind of my thought process.
I understand that, but I also feel responsibility that
I
we spend the money
understand.
for an employee, that I can sit here and if somebody asks, I can say, yes, we're using that person to the benefit that we're spending the money for.
I mean, I would say during those months, I don't know that, Derek didn't have any period of time in there where he banked less than 100 hours. So, and that doesn't include what our part-time person works. So I would feel that that's kind of, we went and looked at hours while we were talking about that as well, that just based on the average number of hours, even during that time, with him not having any overtime and then our part-time person together, that would be enough to fill a shift. So when we looked at the actual hours being worked. So based on just the hours being worked, I feel like we could do
What are we
that.
averaging a week on
Hours of overtime
that?
or?
Just hours a week. What are we
Total hours
averaging?
worked.
So, last pay period, I don't remember how many hours Jason had, but last pay period, like Derek had 110 hours.
I worked Saturday and Sunday. Jason had some stuff to do on Sunday, so I came in and worked.
I don't know what the average is, Paul. I could go pull those averages for our next conversation. We did look at them, but I didn't pull like an average for that time frame. But I can definitely do that.
160 hours would be 2 full-time, and so, another 50 hours between, that's probably, yeah.
You have a record for the last year, I just.
Yeah, I'll go and pull those
That
specifically.
average is for-
We were looking at, if you've got, Jason has between 10 and 12 hours of time a pay period, and then Derek is anywhere, like last week specifically was 100.
Yeah, he normally 13 a week, so about 26 a pay period. High, that's maximum.
Well,
During the slow month. There's a lot of stuff that this last fall and winter, we probably could have taken care of if I had an extra set of hands. So, there's always stuff that we could have been doing, and it's just, if I was to do it myself, I might have injured myself. Or,
I'm not against this.
Yeah.
I
No,
want to
I
make
know.
sure that it's,
yeah.
we can say it's warranted based on
Based on
every week or whatever.
I definitely agree.
in 30 hours of his overtime is more than 40 hours of somebody else's straight pay.
I understand.
I just
And
think we could get a lot more done, especially dirt work, trying to get some of the stuff if I had an extra.
The thing is too, is if we get this, then will he still back off, just take some of that comp time and some of that vacation time?
he
I didn't hear
should.
you, Paul.
I said, so if we get the second person in here, will he take the comp time and the vacation time?
Well, if he doesn't at that point, it's not because his employer didn't make a way for him to do it.
Okay.
Say if it were me in that role, I would be making sure that he was. I know that that's not going to be me, but I would hope that whoever you have in that role, because it wouldn't be to our benefit to have all that, having Derek.
Well, I mean, your first words out of your mouth is you're afraid of burning him out, and he's not doing this, and that. I mean, he's not being able to take all this, and he's accumulating all this. It's still up to him to be able to take it if you had the second person.
You are correct.
So I don't want to get into the thing where he's working all these hours, we have the second person, we come and say, well, we need a third person.
Nope, I understand.
Well, I would say if we got a second full-time, I mean, the overtime would have to be gone. I mean, and that is a management decision. So.
I understand where you're coming from, I just want to make sure that.
No, I completely understand. We're supposed to be push and shove. That's what it's about. Okay, then under materials and supplies, we did increase supplies a little bit. Not a lot, but gas and oil. We looked at the 50-cent markup that we've generally kept on fuel. We increased small tools and equipment just a little bit, and property maintenance. The property maintenance more so because it seems like this year and even last year seems like we're just running into more and more things, and so we had it about the same as what it was, but we kind of got down to the bottom. There was a little bit of room for movement there, and so we increased it a little bit, knowing that especially if we want to get, well, I know you're talking about the taxiway lights maybe being in that next project, but it sounds like we have some electrical work that needs to be done, and that's definitely not cheap. So trying to make sure we've got room for that to take place. For the other services and charges, now this obviously does not include any engineering fees that would come along with those projects that we talked about. So the biggest difference in why there's such a large decrease in our current budget and the requested budget is just because of the engineering fees aren't in there. So what we have there is just our payroll processing fees and our IT fees. So we add that AWAS project in there. There's going to be some engineering that goes along with that, so we'll need to make sure we encompass that as well. And then we don't have anything in capital outlay equipment or in infrastructure. I think my understanding is we wanted to have that conversation brought back to you guys to see what you think our priorities need to be.
Now, apparently our utilities are going to be affected by the fact that, from what I understand, is we're paying for all the electrical of the new set of T-hangers. So
Well,
once we rectify that problem, that should alter that thing, and that's one thing that I think needs to be addressed sooner rather than later, because it's not fair to other renters on the airport.
You don't think that's weighed out by the lights not working?
Remember what I was saying?
We did some notifications and what you need, and we're looking at there's a discussion on 8.4% increase for their costs, and then what I also built into there was a price increase of the CPI at 7.5%. So for all the other utilities. So we're looking at, generally speaking, I'm anticipating an increase in those. If we do get that piece rectified, it may go down a little bit, but I think.
And you're looking at your insurance as staying stable?
At this time, as I get more information, so I just got the questionnaire for our airport insurance that we have, like the airport liability policy that we have, and I'll get that questionnaire filled out, send back in, and we should have that quote back pretty quick. But we don't have our insurance update yet. I expect that anytime this month, as far as health insurance benefits. OMAG, generally speaking, though, we may have a small increase, but we won't know that till July, August time frame. That policy renews in September. So I can call, when I'm talking with that's the similar company that does our health insurance, I can have that same conversation, though, if they're anticipating an increase there.
I think if we can, as far as capital outlay, we probably should try to figure out a budget number for meters on every hangar. And when do we start talking about more hangars?
Well, when do we talk about if something happens where we have no instructor and no mechanic on the airport? Because then you start losing flying.
You know, it's a chicken egg thing.
Right? Because I've seen it before we built that hangar, that this airport was only half full because of that very situation.
What is the cost of a hangar? Other than, I don't mean the upfront, but carrying, once we build it, what's the cost of it?
You mean to maintain it? It's
Not much.
not much, the electrical and the insurance. I mean, it's the overhead you have to maintain.
If nobody's using it, there shouldn't probably be any electrical on it. I just,
But if you
it's
build a
capital
back,
outlay.
then you got 8 meters, so 8 times 35, or whatever that rate is, monthly, and then the insurance.
I don't know, when I hear we've got a waiting list,
There's been a waiting list since 1947.
well, there wasn't right, it took a while to fill the T hangar.
Well, the point is, there's always a waiting list.
So, are you saying then that they're waiting for something and then when it actually comes available, they won't take it?
You know, what I'm saying is that there's always a revolving waiting list. There always has been. I mean, people wait for a spot in the hangar because they prefer not to be in a community hangar or whatever or their plane won't fit in a certain hangar. They wait for a specific thing. So people pass away, people sell off their planes, and there's a evolving thing. And what I caution against is overbuilding to where at some point we're sitting here with empty hangars, a big overhead, and trying to figure out how to pull things together. Because right now, we're talking about bringing a second person on to help maintain stuff on this airport. If we had another building, that's something else to maintain down the road. You're already having problems finding people trying to take care of your bifold doors. If you add 6 or 8 more bifold doors, you're adding additional, you're compounding the problem.
Oh, I understand that, but more aircraft at the airport means, it just means more business for the airport, it means more dollars into the local economy, it means, a lot of things.
What about instead of T hangars, multi-use hangars?
Like,
Well, some hangars will have, an extra part of it that's built for aircraft maintenance, back shop type stuff, or...
we've discussed some of those in the one meeting that we've had outside of this.
Because you might interest an FBO.
In the one revenue, looking at different streams of revenue in our one meeting, we discussed different options that involve some of those types of things. Bringing things in. I'm not against putting hangars, what I'm saying is I've seen what's happened in the past. And everything is cyclic. I believe in cyclic economic theory, and I've seen it happen out here, I've seen it happen in town.
Well, then, now isn't necessarily the right time to have any major capital projects, I'm not saying that, but I think if we're going to fill them up and have people waiting, a plan for the
And things are good.
continued growth, I think would be appropriate. Or maybe at least setting some parameters in place or some, benchmarks where, once we hit a certain benchmark, that's the trigger that we need to say, yep, it's time. Because you're right, all those carrying costs are going to come with it. And we don't charge enough hangar rent to pay for hangars. So it has to be an investment in the economy because it's not, that capital outlay it's going to take a long time to recoup that just on hangar rent.
Do we get any type of OAC funding?
For hangars?
Yeah.
FAA race, nobody puts that in. They only build things that's for the benefit of all. And they don't include a community hangar, is that?
So that's one thing. Revenue side, we talked about the expense side, the increases that we're anticipating with utilities and supplies and all of that. Take fuel out of it, because fuel is kind of a standalone. But hangar rent, do we need to go up for this budget?
Where's it at right now?
It's $800 a year for the south share. It's $1,800 a year for the new T hangars. And it's $1,200 a year for the north share. Which I think it's 100. Is that 150, 180 a month for the big T hangars? Man, I mean,
It seems kind of a sweet spot. I think.
yeah, that might go over that can of
Are
Don't
those
spill those
numbers based on square footage of the hangar, or is it just based on?
I don't know what they're based on.
I'm not sure, Paul, do you know how we came
I
up
have
with
to go back to one.
I think it was quite arbitrary, because we did revise the rates after we got the new T hangars bill, and that it was largely based on where we were at and where we needed to be to not lose occupants. So it was based on the market more than that.
That might be a way to open up hangars for.
So the problem is when you've looked at general aviation aircraft that doubled in price essentially in the last 3 years. Not knowing where fuel prices go, insurance has gone up. The ones that get left holding the bag are the hangar. Because there's a point at which, an owner of an airplane can only afford so much before they say it ain't worth it.
Yeah, I just brought up that, there's people talking about it again, so, I do know that if somebody's buying a plane now, it's because, I just think they just don't want to wait, because I think, from what a lot of people are talking about, they don't see the prices going down until, after summer
For what?
for the planes, for the, if they even do.
172s that you buy for $30,000 2 years ago are ones for $60,000, $70,000. So, and then, it's your annual inspections, it just adds up after a while. So, you have to find that balance between those costs that the owner incurs and then the hangar. And that's the tough part.
Yeah, you make that kind of investment in something, you expect to have to protect it. Part of that protection is what you put it in. Anyway, I don't think we'd be doing our due diligence if we didn't discuss it. That's all I'm saying.
Well, my only concern is how many pilots are coming up over the next 10, 15 years. Are we seeing enough people finishing their pilot's license to be out here and fly? So do we want to try to build something where we're just going to have like you said, where you've seen airport halfway full? Are we looking at that in 5 years? 10 years, 15? It's hard to say.
Like I said, some of that's going to be dictated by how active an instrument. You have to have an instructor to create the pilots. And if you don't have there's two things I think that it's important to keep in an airfield active. That's mechanics and instructors. You have to have the instructors to teach the pilots, and you have the mechanic to keep them flying. If you lack either one of those, it causes problems. You lack both of them, it's a death knell. So you start looking around at the airports that are dying, Generally, it's because, well, I mean, if you go out and your airplane doesn't start, you got a mechanic on the field, what do? Who you gonna call? See? And that's one of the reasons that they built the maintenance hangar here years ago, was to try to always attract and keep a mechanic on the field. And so that's this first building north of us here, we always called it the mechanics building. So you'd have that. You know, we've had as many as 5 instructors on the field at one time. I think we're down to 1 right now. If that individual decided to retire or not instruct anymore, or God forbid something else happened, you know, then you know, who's teaching the new ones? And there was a gap between when this person started and our last one. There was a time here that we had 4 around here. And 18 months, all 3 of them were gone.
Have we participated in any kind of strategic plan with the pilots on the ground for the airport?
I bet they all have their ideas.
Well, I mean,
they're not shy
Not
about
a
their
formal,
ideas.
not in a formal process. Have we done that ever in a formal process?
You know, there used to be, not in a formal process, there used to be the Northwest Pilots Association, which was an active group. In fact, Lynn was part of that. And they would meet monthly and promote things, and maybe come up with a list of things they'd like to see and give that to the airport, and that type of stuff. So there was that route. That's probably the one I'm most familiar with. But I don't know that there's ever been a formal strategic plan.
I mean, you might get some off-the-wall stuff or some unrealistic stuff, but you might get some consistency in some areas where you can, you know, prioritize some strategies moving forward.
You know, and so going back to the hangar part of it, I mean, the expensive part to some degree has been done. We've already put in the taxiways down there and the access for building additional buildings. So that's been one of the hindrances to expansion in the airport was something like that. We've already paid and done that. We still have room for more box hangars. I think there's another spot or 2 over by where you guys are. And then we can either do those types of hangars and or another G hangar over west of the existing G in that area right there. So, and I think they drew it out to where we could put box hangars along the south side between the economic development building and the east-west taxiway or access pathway. At one point, that was hindered because that was leased to Woods County Economic Development, right? And we traded out that and gave them land up here, so we have that to develop down there. So a lot of that is already in place. So our biggest cost is actually building the building and
Oh,
getting
yeah.
service to it.
Absolutely. No, that's what it was when we did the T hangars and then all that as well.
But, you know, I don't know what the escalation of cost, I don't know, you know, that was a $350,000 project. You know, if it's now a $500,000 project, we built the same thing again.
I bet it's at least that now.
Not that we don't have funds set back, but that's a long-term, you know, reclamation of those funds if we spend.
Well, maybe it's something when we talk about our oil revenue, you know, we hit some benchmarks a couple years running with our oil revenue, and that would allow us to maybe move or start that process and, you know, getting our engineering and, you know, those types of things. I mean, that, I like the thought process of creating some benchmarks to determine when that's the right time. That's more outside of the budget conversation, but I think it's a good.
But in our revenue meeting, I mean, what we're discussing and looking at is, you know, is if and when we potential return to the fairgrounds, you know, those assets there. And then, what do we need over here on this side? Do we need a big multi-purpose building that could overnight jets in?
Well, and I think we probably, it's outside, I mean, could be talking about putting these things in the budget, but, you know, not right now. But I'd love to see a restaurant out here. I'd love to, you know.
And that's some of the things that we talked about. And
Yeah.
so, you know, we're just in the infancy stages of that, but, you know, at some point, the oil money is going to run out, and we need to be funneling our energies into what's going to replace that or enhance against that, at least while it's still going. So, we're trying to find times that we can meet and get this further along. So then you look at, if we have X number of dollars, is it better invested into 16 hangars? Is it better invested into a big building that serves a lot of purposes? Does it build a structure that somebody can come in and set up a restaurant in? I mean, where is our best efforts centered?
Yep.
Okay, so let's kind of wrap this back up around to the budget. What can we bring back for next time? Obviously, we'll put in the numbers for the AWAS. What other, do we want to look at a capital outlay to put meters in every, to get all the
I think we
meters,
need to do that.
to get that situation straightened out?
And then we need to figure, there's a bullet that we got to figure out, language and then a way to, whether that's the city, or the airport manager, or however, that's kept track of. That if somebody changes it, it gets changed back because that ball gets dropped.
I don't think there's anything specific to that built in our lease agreement, and that probably needs to be.
I would have to go back and read the lease
I
thing.
don't think there is, but I'll look at it specifically to make sure.
Do you have any wishes on capital outlay, equipment wise?
I mean, you can always think of stuff. But we,
Well, like for example, if you got a second full-time person here, do you need another zero-turn mower?
yeah. Eventually, yeah. I mean, this one, we about need to start thinking about another one anyways, because this one's getting up there in hours, and it'd be time to probably start thinking about.
Is there any value in trading it in at this point in time? I mean, that's a conversation because a lot of times we're wearing our equipment out, so there's no trade-in value, and is it worth looking at?
Yeah,
That
I've never been in that, to trade one.
Right.
We always use them
Until the wheels fall off, but
Well, that's the things that come to my mind is if we bring a second person in, is the one big mower and the small mower and the little tractor mower, is that enough? Do you need another zero turn to do the ramble lights and stuff? That's something I think about. And then where are we at as far as like computers and the Wi-Fi within this building here?
so we have replaced one of the computers this year, correct?
both of them.
Both of them have been replaced. SPI manages that for us and gives us a list. And I need to double check. I don't think there's anything out here for the airport now. But the Wi-Fi piece, maybe worth looking at like the fuel console. We've talked about that in some other conversations, and things are running okay right now. I hate to say that out loud, but things have been going pretty smoothly. So is that something that we need to look at there? I know, we talked about making sure that how our fueling setup is that appropriate for the increase in traffic that we've had? Do we need to look at some changes there? So, those are some all bigger conversations too, but.
Courtesy cars, and how are they funded? Capital outlay or some other means?
Which one's that?
Courtesy cars.
Well, sometimes they're just donated to us. We take them and then we rehab them. Now, we went out and purchased the Buick. The green one was given to us. So, I don't know if we need to upgrade Suburban. Like,
I know.
Twice recently, we've been asked if they had anything to hold 6 or 8 people, so well, you can take 2 vehicles.
so, just something, not that we're sitting here needing to burn money, but,
Right.
if there's things that make the airport more attractive, we're looking, based on like Kelly pointed out, our 6-month average of what the CAA is doing, if that's where some of our majority of our jet fuel revenue is coming from, then maybe we need to make sure we have those things that cater. You've got your power unit that you can take outside. You've got the ice machine. Is there other things, a bigger vehicle that we need to do to enhance those capabilities?
I need to figure out a way to be able to, I don't really want to maintenance, like catering service, but, because sometimes it makes us kind of go out of our way, but if we could make a deal with some of these restaurants, and then find some way to be able to,
Isn't DoorDash in town now? It's not, or whatever it is.
Not
I
that
haven't seen it, but.
No.
Somebody's been talking about it on
Pizza Hut.
Facebook or something. There's talked about. So I didn't know how well established it was.
but the main deal is, how do we pay for it, and then they pay us, I mean, that's the big deal, because, like if I order something for Vanilla Bean or DeBowl or somebody, how I normally is what I do is if they want pizza or something, I'll just order it, have it delivered, and I pay for it, and they just pay me. But,
I'm not familiar with our city website capabilities, but are we, I know there used to be an airport offshoot or
We have an airport page on there.
is there any way to go from airport page there to have a link to something to where they could fill out a little form, like if these people know, a lot of these jets know they're going to stop here before they ever leave. If they want something here, is there some way that there a link could be provided to where they could fill out a little page saying, if you have your list, I can provide these sandwiches or pizza or this or that, have a set basic menu. They click what they want, you know what time they're going to be here, and you can have it out here.
How are they paying? Just cash?
but I don't want to keep cash out here.
I mean, gosh. The diner and the Vanilla Bean, I think you can order online for both of those.
I don't think you can with diner anymore.
You can't the diner anymore?
Last time I tried, I couldn't do it. I don't
Man, I
know.
love that.
If you go to Toast Tab, you can.
Oh, you can?
Yeah. Okay, that's what I always use.
Maybe, okay, so
It's Toast Tab.
okay,
I don't know what that means. It's TOASTTAB.
I don't know.
I don't
That
know.
was there. But I mean, that might be where, something that our other full-time person, it's another responsibility we can add to things that are going on out here. But, we tack 15% on whatever the ticket is, and we go pick it for them and charge, they pay us for the service.
Yeah, so, yeah.
Well, when you're flying a $4 million jet,
Yeah.
15% on $30 is